Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges, and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. I'm delighted to be joined today by Martin Taylor, SAP ERP Project Lead at the National Air Traffic Services, NATS. So, welcome, Martin.
Thanks very much, Craig. It's excellent to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you.
Oh, great. And today's episode is the latest in our series of interviews with senior leaders in the SAP community to hear about their career, tips for getting ahead, and any challenges they may have faced. So, just before we get into that, Martin, I thought I'd ask you, do you have a signature dish that you love to make?
Oh, now you're talking. Now, luckily enough, just this weekend gone, my daughter and her boyfriend came round and they were treated to a mushroom risotto. And it
Ooh.
is a thing of great beauty, and they appreciate. I'll put it this way: they finished it. Whether they appreciate it, I don't know, but it's my go-to dish. My partner is vegetarian, which basically means that my previous signature dish of chicken Florentine is no longer on the menu. So yeah, so that's it. Mushroom risotto. Don't know why. Nice and simple. It's a bit of a Mary Berry dish, I think, from memory. So it's all good.
Very impressive, though. Whilst you were talking through that, I'm thinking, God, yeah, man is kind of a chunky beef stew.
So, yeah,
Whacked in a giant Yorkshire pud.
also, well, I say, well, Yorkshire, you had me at the chunky beef stew. Unfortunately, Yorkshire pudding's the wrong side of the Pennines for me. So Lancashire pudding, yes, but I don't think they exist actually. But yeah, anything from Yorkshire, I always back away from growling normally. You can edit that out later if you like.
Well, I won't go the usual saying as if it ain't Yorkshire, I'll stop right there and we'll move things on slightly. So, just to start things off, Martin, could you give us a bit of background, please, on your career so far? What led you to working in the industry, and when did SAP become part of your responsibility?
Okay, yes, smashing. No, I'm very happy to do that, Craig. There's a short version, a long version, and a medium version of this one. So I'll try and head for the medium version if that's okay.
Okay.
So by training and disposition, I'm a finance dude. I started my career with KPMG many years ago in Newcastle. And then I was walking past a notice board one day, and it said, "Anybody fancy a job in the Bahamas?" So I said, "Yeah, that'll be me. I'll give that a go." And so I had 10 years out in the Caribbean. That was in 1990. I had 10 years out in the Caribbean, during the course of which I did the audit of a company I'd never heard of before called Cable and Wireless. And I wrote a management letter that basically almost got the general manager fired. So he said, "It's easy to criticize Taylor, so come and fix it." So I did. So I had 9 years out there with Cable and Wireless, including, oddly enough, 3 years in Anguilla, where I was the head of IT and finance. So that was my first touch in the IT department. That was what the best part of what's that? Nearly 30 years ago now. And so it was mostly in-house billing systems. So there wasn't much of a SAP involvement there. And then I met my wife out in the Cayman Islands, came back to the UK and worked for a company called CETA. Now there are two companies called CETA. One of them's a bin company, and the other one provides services for the airlines, networks and applications. I work for the latter company, and spent 17 years there working on various mostly finance and commercial roles. Again, didn't touch too much of SAP during that time apart from being a jobbing user. And then through a series of events, I ended up working at NATS about 8 years ago. Again, jobbing user, looking at the system, obviously working in finance there a little bit closer to it. And then about 18 months ago, through the good auspices is of Trish Griffiths and Emma Chambers that I think you know, I was asked to come and join the ERP team, which I now lead. And yeah, so ever since then, it's been 18 months of understanding what the ERP system to do, what the SAP system can do for us, what we don't need it to do, but more importantly, how we can use it as a change as a way to change the business. So I am by nature, I'm not a bit head. When people start talking noughts and ones and FDPs and stuff like that, whatever an FDP might be, I don't know. Things start to go over my head. So I'm primarily a business person. That's the reason I was brought on to the program to enable us to change the business. So relative newcomer to SAP, been a user for probably more than 40 years and not known it sometimes. And yeah, and it's been a very good what's the word I'm looking for? It's been a very good investment of time. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Oh, fantastic. So we have Emma and Trish, who you rightly said, yes, I do know very well, to thank for bringing you into, I suppose, the user group community as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I say, unfortunately, events have rather conspired in the last couple of things for me not to be there. But I was at the signature event that you have that was the Connect. I think it was last year, and that was phenomenal. And my colleagues who have been to the subsequent one came back absolutely raving about it. Be it the HR professionals who were really excited about success factors, the finance community who are really looking to get into the guts of what the new HANA system can do, and what it can't do and what we need it to. So I think everybody there was very pleased to be at the Connect. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it because I was doing a presentation to a sub committee of the board on the day I was supposed to be there. So I do apologise for that.
No, no problem. Well, thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate it. And just going back slightly, so 10 years in the Caribbean,
Yep.
did you come back for the weather?
Uh, funnily enough, no. There's always something else, isn't there? I do remember just getting back. I think I was on Friends Reunited in kind of pre-Facebook days, where it said just got back from the Cayman Islands and now settled into Slough. And I said you don't know how painful it was to write that. Um, no, it was. I'd always had an idea that I would probably have 10 years in the Caribbean, and I left while I was still drinking beer, and most of my friends were drinking rum, and I figured I should probably leave while I'm still drinking beer. And it's a beautiful part of the world, and it's if anybody is considering going there, I'd be very happy to have a conversation with them. But it's hard work, right? You're
Mm,
working for multinationals and you're expected to work as hard as anybody else in London. But having said that, you do get a good tan, the money's good, and superb experience. I mean, 10 years, 10 years in Slough as opposed to 4 years in the Turks and Caicos, 3 years in Anguilla, a year in Antigua, and 2 years in the Cayman Islands. It's a bit of a toss up, really, isn't it, when you come to
yeah,
think of it?
it is. Yes, it is. Maybe the rain wasn't as heavy in Slough, but it was probably more pronounced.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right. But it's nice. It's nice to be back in the UK. I always figured that I've got many friends who are still out there, and people who've done very well in their careers or whatever. But I figured I am by nature and disposition a British English person or whatever, and so it's been good to be back, and the opportunities I've had since I've been back have been very exciting as well.
Oh, excellent. So just looking at your current role now, and how you moved from CETA to obviously organisation in the transport industry, as you said.
Yeah.
Was that a natural transition to NATS, or how did you land your current role?
And basically, my boss at CETA moved to NATS, and we'd worked together among others to do some good work at Heathrow on the implementation. Interestingly enough, CETA and Capgemini did an implementation or an outsource on behalf of HAL, and I spent about 2 years there. We did some good work there, and so I said, if there's anything interesting going, let me know. And about 6 months later, I was lucky enough to be able to hop over the fence and join that. So it's been a been a very good opportunity. I think the air transport industry is something that, whilst I'm not a pilot, I think pretty much everybody in the air transport industry is a frustrated pilot. I'm not one of them. I was frustrated some time ago. But it's just a fabulous industry to be in. I know that the guys who run Warburton's think Warburton's is a great business to be in. I think the guys who run the packaging business think that's a great business to be in. I happen to love the transport industry. It's very much it's not quite a thankless task, but people don't notice you when you're doing it right. It's only when things don't go right that anybody knows who NATS is.
Yes.
So from that point of view, it's quite satisfying. I think there are potentially some parallels with SAP implementations, whereby you only note you only get noticed if things don't quite work out right. So one of the philosophical points that my exec sponsor Chris Last, who's our HR director, has given me, is a bit of Socratic advice, which is first do no harm. No, that's Hippocrates, isn't it? So a bit of Hippocratic advice, which is basically first do no harm, right? So that's almost like the marching orders that we've got, is make sure this thing is implemented such that the people who need to know about it and they make the changes. But for the great majority of the staff, we'll just tell them it's happened. We'll show them the fact that it's mobiles, and it's much easier to access all the things that you need to do as a jobbing user. Out of the 4,500 people that we have within the business, we expect probably a couple of hundred to be intimately affected, but probably the other remaining 4,300 will tell them it's happening. But more importantly, we'll told them when it's happened, and these are the benefits that you'll get. It's evolution, not revolution, and you'll be able to get your pay slip more accurately. You'll be able to book your holidays online, that kind of stuff. And frankly, that's all that matters to the majority of our staff. So it's a kind of a nice parallel. Joining NATS was a nice parallel for the implementation of the ERP system, I suppose.
Oh, fantastic. So flying under the radar, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't like it when people fly under the radar, because that way danger lies, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. But for flying in the radar is probably fair. But one of the next things coming, just in case, just I'm sure people know, is that we're looking at how we can integrate drones and aeroplanes into the same airspace. So that's one of the next big things that we're looking at. Probably not something which is going to touch the ERP system for the foreseeable future, because most of the things that we do to shift aeroplanes aren't actually done through the SAP system. But it may require joint ventures and acquisitions and things like that that will kind of test. Because as Trish may have told you, we're on a very old version of ECC, as a result of which we built up. We do SAP implementations regularly every 17 years, right? So as a result of that's why we gone outside looking for the professionals, because if you do something every 17 years, you're probably going to forget how to do it.
Very
And that's
true.
exactly what we've done. So we built up 17 years worth of scleroticism in the system. And that's one of the things that we're looking to do now, is to scrape out 17 years worth of necessary code kind of fixes. But we're just looking to say, right, we need to get out of this. The fact that we have an awful expression, which is nazification, which I really don't like, because when it goes into when you get a readout of any transcript, it doesn't read as nazification, it reads as something else. So we don't like nazification. We want to go back to standard, and has been one of the big challenges so far, and will continue to be one of the big challenges into the future, to make sure that people who have made a career, 20 years, 30 years often, doing things in a certain way, that we want to try and encourage them to do things in a more standardized, more simpler way.
And of course, you come from the business side as well, and you're leading
Yeah,
the ERP team and the ERP project. And
yeah.
when I've talked to many people about SAP related projects, and the key thing everybody says is we need to have business outcomes, and it's a business transformation rather than an IT transformation. So I think
Absolutely.
that's really good.
We know our community. but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UK&I SUG membership with those who don't know about us? The UK&I SUG referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
And on that point, how many are in the ERP team that's going on this journey with you?
It's a good question, Craig. I think depending on the definition, I've become a bit of a project manager in the recently as well. And define your terms. So we've got in the core team, we've probably got about half a dozen people. Right,
Good.
so we've got representative, we've got Trish who's representing us from the finance and asset management side. We've got a guy that we brought in from another organisation who's taking care of success factors. We've got a project manager, a couple of IT leads, and that's pretty much it really. Plus a couple of junior project managers, and then we bring in we got our change people that we bring into kind of like an outer core. We've identified a change map of about 90 people that we need to be influencing on a daily basis. So it's quite a close knit team, and we've endeavoured to make it, even like with Trish and others, we've endeavoured to make it a very much a business led thing. And the IT people are obviously there and present, but it's not something that fundamentally they're leading. I think even if you ask them, I think they probably would say that they weren't leading it. So I
Oh,
think
fantastic.
I think it'd be good, and so it's nice and contained, and we've taken some conscious decisions to get on the basis that we don't do this terribly often. We've been through a fairly robust, well, very robust actually, RFP process to get the best partners in with us. So again, I don't think there's any secret. We chose Capgemini after quite an extensive process to get down. We spent probably the best part of 12 months in the investigation and the RFP process just to make sure that we were absolutely crystal clear on what we wanted. Just mindful of the fact that everybody, including my exec sponsor, says that ERP programs go badly wrong, and therefore we've taken the time to make sure that they don't. So as much as we can, we've kicked off. We started the project, and we are looking for kind of all the potholes that other people have seen, and trying to look over the horizon and prevent them. So we're very pleased with that. The SAP people, Henrietta Horsley Gubbins, who's our account person, she's been very, very understanding with us in our journey where we've been from a fairly high volume. We originally thought we'd go for the rise option. And that had many advantages in its favor, but in the end, because of our regulatory model and because of the overall cost basis, it worked out better value for money for us to go for the AnyPrem solution. So that's what we did. I believe that Rise is a great product for people who use it maybe a little closer to our equivalent of shifting aeroplanes, but we don't use our systems by and large to shift airplanes. So there was less of a kind of revenue imperative, as it were, to getting everything onto a Rise option. So yeah, and they've been really good, and yeah, so we got ourselves a good team of people together, and I think that's what it's about. Is that everybody tells me it's about getting everybody aligned, revved up. We've just done a kickoff. I think we had 95 people on the call, and you're thinking, should we have 95 people at a kickoff? I really don't know. But then you ask everybody, and they go, "Yep, I'm pleased we were here. We're 4.5 hours older, but we're 4.5 hours wiser as well." So hopefully that will hold us in good stead for some of the harder conversations when you said, well, you do remember back in February when we said why we were doing this and how we need your help. This is when the rubber's going to hit the road. So I think.
Lovely. And I
Yeah.
suppose from the perspective of upgrades every 17 years,
Yeah.
ERP, and if we look at the finance function, I suppose that changed quite dramatically over that time.
Absolutely, it has. Yeah, very much so. This is when I do find myself deferring to Trish a little bit. But what Trish tells me is the following: is that we initially set up when the SAP system was set up. Just to give you a bit of kind of business background, we are the nature of NATS is we are a licensed monopoly to provide air traffic services in the UK. And we also have a commercial arm, which is called NATS Services Limited. And NATS Services Limited was relatively small 17 years ago. As it stands now, it's a couple of 100 million of revenue with a desire to grow considerably. And as a result of which, one of the main things that the system was set up to do was to make sure that those two businesses were kept very, very much apart. And so we built incredibly high walls around that. We only operated, I think at that time, we only operated in the UK. Subsequently, we got operations in Hong Kong, in the Middle East, and in the Far East, and some European activities as well. So we've had lots of new companies, and whenever we set up a new company, we've had to set up different controlling areas. Trish will give me the vocabulary on that one, but we've got a level of complexity which is not really commensurate with a 4,500 people organization. Just to give you a clue, we brought in one of the other integrators to do some initial work for us, and they said when they saw our system, they thought we were the equivalent of somebody like Procter and Gamble or somebody who does acquisitions every fortnight. They couldn't when they looked at the system, they were amazed that we were such a simple organization with such a complicated structure. But the truth of it is, over those 17 years, each one of those decisions had been the right one on the day. Given
Mhm.
where we were, each of the decision was the right one. So none of this is actually kicking the people who have made these decisions. Within the constraints, they were absolutely right. But what we're endeavoring to do with this implementation is to remove some, not all of those constraints, because we do have a regulated monopoly that we need to keep separate. But one of the main things that we're looking to do is to make sure that if we do need to, let's say we win some business in India, we're looking to spin up a business in India in the time that the business needs us to, rather than it being a drag anchor on the business activity. And we are told that we can do that. We can tailor our needs. It's all the tax regulation is set up depending on where we operate. I understand that each of the states have slightly different tax laws and stuff like that, and that the system is pre-configured that if you're working in Bangalore or if you're working in Chennai, it knows the difference and will set you up right. And that's worth many thousands of pounds to us.
Yeah, I can well imagine that simplification and that
Yeah,
support
absolutely.
through that. And I think you did touch on it a little when you were talking about your decision of which flavour, shall we say, of S4 HANA you're looking to go down.
Yeah.
But are there many unique challenges that working in the air transport industry brings you in a program like this?
It's an interesting one. By and large, what we're seeing is probably ones that, um, because we are critical national infrastructure, and I think probably quite a lot of the SAP users kind of fall into a similar category. So we are not unique, but we have some things that many other people don't have. So, for example, we need enhanced security vetting of the subcontractors. So again, in a complete outbreak of honesty, that's taken longer at the start of the implementation than we hoped it would do, because we need to be absolutely certain that the people who are accessing our systems don't have any what nefarious intent. So that's been one. We've obviously got we're obviously subject to the other things like the GDPR that everybody's subject to, and we have a tendency to want to keep our data close rather than having it kind of scattered all over the planet. So that's another consideration. But by and large, our probably a topic for another conversation, Craig. But by and large, the sexy, exciting things about shifting aeroplanes isn't by and large done on SAP.
Yeah.
So we do our rostering in a separate system. We do our you would as you would maybe imagine, I don't know, is that we have got a number of bespoke systems that knows where an aeroplane is knows where it's been. Well, actually, knows that it's an aeroplane, because that's the first thing. Because it's because apparently our license compels us to move to know what anything bigger than a chicken is, apparently. So if there's anything flying over Heathrow that's bigger than a frozen chicken, we're supposed to know that it's there. And so say that to say this, which is our systems know that it is an aeroplane. They know where it's been. We know where it is. We know where it's going, and we know what we said to it. That that fundamentally is air traffic control in a nutshell. And once you've cracked that in the underlying systems, then the SAP system just interfaces to that. So, for example, on a periodic basis, we do an interface between the rostering system and our leave system in or will be in success factors, just to know that people who are rostered on a particular sector within the airspace, whether they're available to work, say a week on Tuesday or something like that, or whether they booked holiday. That kind of thing is where the interaction happens. So we are to an extent one step removed from the action, but we are still very much kind of part of the action, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. No, lovely. And you mentioned before about the very robust RFP process and learning from others' mistakes and
Yeah.
or the pitfalls that are out there and how you can get around them. So where do you go for help when you require assistance for SAP related matters?
It's a very, very good question, Craig. I think one of the main places I've come is the UK SUG. So there's a lot of information. I'm ashamed to say I've probably not attended as many of the sessions as I should have done, but pretty much every week I'm getting something coming through and going, that looks interesting. And even if I don't go, we've got our success factors people are going, yes, we've seen it, Martin, stop bloody sending it to us, we've seen it, we're going. Right. The exec forum has been incredibly helpful as well. I think particularly, I'm trying to remember the guy's name who's been through the car dealership organization. Is it
Oh, Vincent
Vansall? Yeah,
Petit of Inchcape.
yeah, yeah. So Vincent was saying he's been a very valuable source of information on things that have been that he's tripped over, and then we've also actually just getting the people, the likes of Capgemini. We had some work done by Deloitte. They were incredibly helpful at looking at tripped area, and we've also brought in a team of people who had done this before, right? So it's not something that NATS does that often. So we brought in somebody who's implemented success factors. Our project manager has had 10 years in the industry, and pretty much everybody that Capgemini has brought in has got battle scars around the place. And whenever I've had a couple of instances already in the last couple of weeks where they were saying, well, you could do that, Martin, but a little bit like Sir Humphrey. Do you remember that would be very courageous, Minister? Which basically means don't be so stupid. And I've had a couple of them recently. That says, I've got a great idea. Why don't we do it like this? Why don't we funnel all of the hiring rather than having 500 people as hiring managers? Why don't we funnel it through five? Well, you could do that, Martin, but no, not really. No, don't do that. And so it's been that kind of advice that's kind of blunted my natural edge to take things a little further than they should. So I think the truth of it is that there's a wide range of people out there. The I find yeah, and Hen and her team. They have a team of not quite back office people, but value management people within SAP, and they were superb at that was a bit of benchmarking that they did for us just in terms of complexities of our volumes and stuff like that, and that was incredibly valuable. So I think what we're doing is we're realizing that we are, well, I'm unconsciously incompetent. Some of the team are more consciously competent, and we're just trying to mix that up and basically say, whilst there's no such thing as a dumb question, there is, but we're just trying to get a help as and when we can, and we're just taking input in. We've also got Price Waterhouse helping us from an assurance point of view. So, and I understand that I don't know about you. I don't know, Craig, whether you're seeing that more and more. Is you have an implementation partner and an assurance partner. I understand that that's becoming more and more common.
It's very interesting, and certainly, you've mentioned a few there, that some work you've done with Deloitte, you've got Capgemini as your main implementation partner, PwC, your assurance. That's interesting. So how do you rate the level of support provided by software vendors and IT partners?
Oh, frankly, we're in the it's as the Chinese say, it's too early to tell. I think when they're asked about the French Revolution, has it been a success? And 200 years later, it's too soon to tell. So, I think as a person who was not an expert on it, I think that you get the right one, and they can simplify things down to a language that even I can understand,
Mhm.
which has been really helpful. I think the truth of it, Craig, is that the proof will be in the pudding, which will be a successful cutover before March 31st of next year. So if I'm back in 14, well, let's say 13 months, we'll put something in the diary for the weekend after the cutover, and you can ask me then. But on the face of it, on the basis that we are kind of knocking down our wrists from time to time, I've been very impressed with the advice that's out there. A lot of it's down to relationships. I'm sure you'll see, Craig, is that you've got to find the right fit. You've got to find the right organization across the team and across the organizations that you partner with, and you've got to feel comfortable. So we had some superb RFP responses, and then we met the people who thought, yeah, these are very impressive, capable people. And then we started thinking, but are they people that we can work with? And despite the fact that Cap were the incumbent, they came, in my telling of the story, they came with the incumbency, not a dividend, but an incumbency deficit, if you know what I mean. So I was looking not less favourably, but I was looking no more favourably at Capgemini as our incumbents than because it's a new team. I
Hmm.
think there's one person who's common, but everybody else is new. So from that point of view, the incumbency really didn't count for terribly much. But I think it's that fit. And I think that that's where we've got ourselves now. We got a team that's kind of revved up and pointed in the same direction, and it's taken a while for us to figure out who's doing what. And I think that that's why I'm very pleased that we probably didn't start this project 6 months ago, even though it would have given me 6 months more months to implement it. We got a company in to specify our RFP, third party organization. It's a company called ISG. As they say, other companies are available. But again, down to the one individual guy called JD, he was absolutely mustard. He understood our business. He did what all proper providers should do. He over-egged the contract in our favour. So we set up a standard contract. We set up all of the races, all of the things that you would want in a contract were there from day one. So we had to force ourselves to say, yes, that is NATS accountabilities. We are going to do it. But equally, we were able to say to Capgemini and all of the other providers, we want you to do this. Right? It's not a grey mishmash of, you might do it if you fancy doing or whatever. No, you are going to do that within a fixed price. You are going to do that, and that I think has been up and we did the kickoff less than a month ago, so we're very much in the foothills. So it might be a different story in 6 months, but as of now, it feels like we just signed off the first deliverables, and it feels like a level of comfort and clarity that as a businessman, I feel more than comfortable to sign off the fact that something has been delivered to the standard that we wanted it. We've got really strong acceptance criteria all the way through, and a good governance model as well. And as I said, people tell me that even though you might have the risk of blue on blue action, where you've got two professional services companies, one doing the delivery and another one kind of not quite marking the homework but providing advice, you could possibly see the opportunity for friction there. We haven't seen that in any meaningful way yet. It's just been kind of fairly healthy challenge, if you know what I mean. So I understand others have done it. I'm trying to learn. I've got a call set up. I think it's next week with an organisation that's been through this, of having Capgemini as the integrators and having PwC as the assurance partners. So I'm looking to get wisdom from them. Maybe just a final point is that it's funny, once you start talking around an organization, you find lots of people with lots of ERP experience. I was talking to one of our blokes who I was gate chair on a project, and he was saying to implement radars of all things, right? And I was talking to this bloke, and he said, "Oh, you do know, Martin, that I implemented the first HANA system in the UK." I said, "I did not know that." Right, so that's really incredibly helpful, and we've just had a new person joining, who implemented the guy called Phil O'Hare, who oversaw the implementation of the HANA system in TFL. And I think again through Emma and through Trish's good auspices, we got some good links with TFL and others. And frankly, it's been a while since we've had any major interactions, but it's nice to know that somebody's always there, that you can pick up the phone and have that conversation, even if you don't. It's like phone a friend, I guess, is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Leveraging the community, and
Yeah.
that's one of the key things that I see as well. That within the community of SAP customers, everybody's there for each other.
Yeah.
They're there to help and support. And you mentioned a wide variety of people and bringing specialists in. And you yourself, obviously, you've had a quite variety of roles and experience over the years. So how have you been able to implement learnings from your experience, your past experience, to help on the project you're working on now and leading that into the S4HANA?
It's a good question, Craig. I think it's one of those sliding doors moments, isn't it? When you don't know how bad it would have been if you hadn't have had that experience, right? So what we're hoping is that every month that goes by, that the wheels haven't fallen off, that we inherently realize that we've used something from our past. So I've got a couple of quotes I kind of carry with me from the past, which there's one about Confucius. Confucius says about the first step to wisdom is to call things by their proper names, and I find that very powerful. And I have said as much to the SAP product management team, who appear to be the exact opposite of Confucius. But that said, I have had conversations with them, and they have said, yes, we do acknowledge that the naming conventions of many of the things are not immediately clear. And they do acknowledge that. And I think having had conversation with Rich Grither amongst others, he's saying that's the kind of feedback that they need, right? Is to say, if you've got something that you're calling a treasury management system, make sure it does treasury management, right? And make sure that if you do need another half a dozen modules in order to run your treasury management system, tell your customers you need 6 other modules to run your treasury management system. And I think so that's the big thing for me, and the learning, and that's the thing that we have kind of fed back. And it's I was kind of wanting to tell sort of bit of a warts and all story, right? Because if I'm the only person on the planet that thinks that the SAP modules are inappropriately named, I will put my hand up, right? But everything I think I know, whenever I say that statement, and people go, yeah, the naming isn't great. So that's why I said it. The other ones in terms of experience is a variant on the KISS idea of keep it simple, stupid. There's a chap called Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote The Little Prince, and also was an early aviator. And that's why I know him, because of CETA and NATS. And to make a long story short, what he said was that the artist's work is done not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing more to take away. And I found that very, very powerful over the years. That basically says many organizations think that a 100-page document is improved by making it a 102-page document. I do not subscribe to that view. I subscribe to the view that if you can say what you need to say on 2 pages, put the pen down, right? If it needs 102 pages because it is the lifeblood of the organization and it's everything every day to everybody in one sheet of paper, then put it in there. But if you can say it on 1 piece of paper, say it on 2 pieces of paper, say it and put the pen down. And so I think that that's the thing that I'm trying to inculcate in the organization, that make it nice and simple. And if you think you've done enough, you probably have done enough. Come the moment when we do the UAT, we're going to UAT this thing to death, right? But things leading up to that, if it's good enough, move on. And I think it's that bit of pragmatism that sometimes is not always present in other projects, certainly within companies I've worked in, where everything needs that little bit of extra gold plating. And have you asked this other person? I said, no, I haven't. Oh, why not? Because I think I've got a good enough answer now. Yeah, but why don't you ask them? Because I don't want to, because I haven't got time to, right? Because I've decided and we're going to move on now. Or the team's decided and we're going to move on now. So I think that's kind of been a bit of the learning that I've had over the years of don't make it any more complicated than it needs to be. Some of this stuff needs to be complicated, but the things that don't need to be, let them not be.
I completely agree with you there. So one of the things we've been working on here actually at the user group for a short time is, okay, how do we explain, what this event is or what this product or service is, get that down, right? How can we say that in less words? How can we reduce the amount of words but still get that message across? And I really do like that. Keep it simple.
It is good. And my youngest child is 18 now, and he's a clever lad, so it does the analogy doesn't quite work. But I always used to say, if I can explain it to my 11-year-old, then I've cracked it. Right, but unfortunately he's 18. He's at Durham Uni now, so it's the analogy doesn't quite work. But generally speaking, is that and what I found in my interactions, I don't know what other people find as well, but I found in my interactions with the exec, as soon as I started using 3-letter, and we do like a good 3-letter acronym in NATS as well, but as soon as I started using 3-letter acronyms and started getting into the guts about the system, you could see their eyes glaze over. They had no interest at all. It's all about, tell me what it means for the business. What's going to be better, faster, or cheaper as a result of this, and safer. And frankly, I think we probably had the conversation before, Craig, is that the reason that we implemented that we're making the move is because of the end of service deadline at the end of 25. Right? Would we have carried on? I'd like to flatter ourselves that we would have made a change, but it is fundamentally a risk reduction program that we're doing. We'll take the opportunity to do things better where we can and where it's economically viable to do so. But fundamentally, if SAP would have said, "Now we'll extend to 2030, Martin," we'd have found all kind of reasons to keep extending it to 2030, and we'd have kept up. We'd have grown 5 years more scleroticism, and it would have been that 5 years more difficult, 5 years more tech debt that we built up, so that it would have been more difficult. So I think all of the exec members, or at least all the ones that were still awake at the end of the presentation, acknowledged the fact that it was a good time to do it, and that we'd probably thank ourselves in hopefully 15 months' time when this thing is done and dusted and in, and that we've got potentially another 17 years out to 2040 before we need to choose to do it again, unless we choose to do it again for a good business reason.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic, brilliant. And, as we come to a close of our discussion now, which has been fascinating to me, I have to say, Martin, thank you. If you looked into your crystal ball, what do you think will be the biggest changes we'll see in business in the next 5 years?
Oh, now you're asking. If my crystal ball was turned up to 11, I would say the appropriate implementation of AI, and by that I mean just very, very simple things like if your cost base runs 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, the chances are it's probably not going to be 20 next month, and chances are it's not going to be 180 next month. So could you find a way of getting artificial intelligence behind your firewall to help you with stuff like that, such that the people who are working very hard to create a forecast of 100 get time to do better, more useful things, because it's got to be 100, right? And then I think the other piece of it is my strong suspicion of it is that things tend to happen, as much as you want these things to happen quickly, they do tend to happen considerably more slowly than you think they are going to do. So I think if you figure out what the adoption of AI needs to be, I think everybody sticking a question into Chat GPT, I think any monkey can do that, can't they? You can get anybody to do that. It's actually finding something useful to do with the output and having the confidence. That's one of the big things that we're looking at, having the confidence in the answers, that if you are using it in any way, shape or form in the business, that you've got that. We aren't at the moment in any meaningful way, although we have been using aspects of AI but not calling it that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We've got a beautiful machine learning thing that we're doing with the Alan Turing Institute, which is possibly a subject of another conversation, where we are doing effectively a digital twin for an air traffic controller. Now, that's a fascinating piece of work. Now, it's not going to replace the air traffic controller. It's just going to be another piece of a toolkit to assist them. And it's knowing that the important thing about the AI for us is knowing kind of where it came from. It's almost like the sourcing of your mushrooms in your mushroom risotto. You want to know where your mushrooms have come from, right? And it's that kind of thing that we think is going to be particularly important. So as much as I think AI should be a thing, I do wonder whether in 5 years' time we'll still be thinking about another 5 years' time before it's actually moving the needle as far as the business effectiveness is concerned.
Oh, thank you very much, and I like your use of the word appropriate
Yeah.
when looking at AI. I think that's very important. And Martin, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Craig. Thank you. It's been great questions. I really appreciate it. And it's I say if anybody who's listening to that ever wants to chat, then I guess there'll be connection information there. Always happy to talk SAP with people. Always delighted to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, and thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. So please do make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and fly high.